Well, good evening. Thanks everybody for attending Tuesday's May 17th City Council meeting. We are streaming tonight's meeting live on City of Madison YouTube channel, so those who are not here tonight can view it from home, or they can watch it at a later date. We have a pretty packed agenda tonight that also includes 2 public hearings. I just want to make an announcement that when we suspend the regular council meeting and we go to the public hearing, we would ask everybody who is here present for that public hearing to sign the sign-in sheet. And that becomes permanent record on behalf of our compliance for public hearing. And our clerk treasurer has the sign-in sheets, correct? Oh, we will circulate those. Like all of our meetings, we will start by standing and bowing our heads, removing our hats, and reciting the Lord's Prayer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Clerk, may we have a roll call, please?
Here.
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 Here. Here.
Thank you. I want to welcome our guests. I do see Commissioner Little and Commissioner Bramer in the audience tonight. Is Commissioner Lee here too? Don't want to miss him. Thank you both for being here. Council, have you had an opportunity to review the minutes from the May 4th meeting? If so, we'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from last month.
Seconded.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. All right, right now we will recess our regular council meeting, and there should be a sign-in sheet going on now. We will call to order the public hearing regarding the closing of a state community development block grant relating to homeowner occupied rehabilitation program. We'd like to invite SERPC Representative Patty Jackson to the podium, please. If we make sure the sign-in sheet gets circulated. Oh, it is? Okay.
My name is Patty Jackson, and I'm with the Southeast Virginia Regional Planning Commission, and we're conducting the second public hearing for the Madison Stellar owner-occupied rehab program.
Just turn your mic on, please. Yep, there we go. Just push the button. There you go. Thank you.
Is that better? Okay. So we're here to conduct the second public hearing. We did a public hearing at the beginning of the project, and then we do one at the end to kind of summarize what we did. So I did send you guys a packet, or I shared it with Tammy. I don't know if you guys got that or not, but I also brought before and after pictures to share with anybody in the audience once I get done with this. So the grant was funded in December of 2018, and we were awarded $250,000, and we assisted 9 low to moderate income residents that were located within the city limits of Madison. We performed minor repair and rehab work on their homes. Funds that were used to put new roofs on, new windows in. We put in HVAC. New water heaters, handicap ramps. We addressed health and safety concerns, lead-based paint hazards, and handicap bathrooms. So 7 of the households were considered elderly, 2 of them were single-parent head of households, and 77% of the households we assisted were considered very low income, which is good. We want to reach those that do not have the means to do the work themselves. The grant ended actually in October of 2020. So as you can see, we're a little behind on all of this thanks to COVID. So we're glad to be able to get this wrapped up finally. At this time, I'll go on ahead and open up for any questions that anybody has for public comment. And if anybody would like the before and after packet of the photos, I'd be glad to share those with you. Do you guys have those? Okay. Does anybody in the audience want before and after photos?
Patty, I just want to say I think this is a fantastic program and really appreciate the investment to help particularly our low to moderate income residents across the community with some much needed rehabilitation.
Thank you. I'm going to say if there are no other comments, then we can close the public hearing.
Any other comments? Patty, thank you very much. We will adjourn a public hearing regarding the closing of the state CDBG relating to homeowner occupied rehab program.
Great.
Thank you again. We look forward to the next one.
Great. One thing I would
Yes.
like to share with you guys is that the state right now is looking at doing away with this program. So if you have an opportunity to reach out to your state representative or congressman, you probably want to let them know that the funding is still needed for this program, not just to develop affordable housing, but to also maintain and preserve the current housing that we have. So we'll be sharing more information with you on that through our email blast.
Patty,
but-
did this require any homeowner match for
No,
the funding?
it does not.
That's what's great about this program. Our PACE program has been really successful across the community, but there is a match associated with that, so that I think that's what's really helpful with this one.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Thank you for being here. All right, I would like to reconvene the regular council meeting. Do not see any presentation of petitions, memorials, remonstrances, or introduction of motions and guests, so let's move on to resolutions, or I'm sorry, let's go on to reports, recommendations, or other business from standing select committees of City Council. Are there any? Hearing none. Move to reports of city officials. So first up, we'll introduce Hannah Fagan, who is our Director of Community Relations.
Hello, Council. As a reminder, we didn't mention this before, make sure you have your mics on. We actually changed our sound system, so those mics are directly plugged in, which will give us better sound quality on YouTube. So we've recently made that change, but if you're not speaking into your mic, then the sound quality won't be too great. So anyways, I'm just here tonight to introduce to you our new summer interns. As you know, we revitalized the intern program. We require applications of our interns. We do an interview process, and then we have different positions that they can fill. So one of our interns cannot be here tonight, but he will be for our Parks Department, and his name is Neil Mystery. And he's going to IU. And then we have these three. Most of you know Abby Hill. She interned for us during her school program, her high school program, last spring. So she fulfilled some high school requirements, and then she is here with us this summer, actually interning in the clerk's office this time around. And then I have Abby Fulton. She is a policy intern, so she's working a lot on some policy. She'll be working with my office. She'll be working with the mayor. She's also working with Jenna Armstrong, who's doing like HR policy updates. And then we have Jacob Smith, and he is the communications intern, so he's going to be working directly with me. And then the communications assistant, who will be starting next week, Keely White, so he'll be working a lot with them. But here's our new interns. If you guys have any questions, let me know.
I want to welcome everybody. They got a introduction to the office today, and we indicated that working in City Hall is a bit of a combination between Parks and Rec and the office and West Wing. There's so much that going on, and it's almost entertaining, right? Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you. I heard Gina laughing.
All right, next up, our Parks Director, Matt Wooler, will give us a parks report.
Evening, Council. I got a lot of information there for you in the packets, hitting some of the highlights. As we speak right now, Chad Eisen is over at the ball fields. We've got youth baseball, softball, and t-ball that are going off right now. Have over 280 participants across our 3 leagues. One thing that we stated coming into 2022 was that we wanted to increase our youth participation across all of our sports by 20%. And so I am proud to say that through so far this year with baseball and softball only, we have increased our participation from last year by 24%. And now that's not including our t-ball, which has been dormant for 20 years, bringing that back. And that's not including bringing in alternate teams to come play against some of our teams as well. So we're very pleased with how that's progressing. That's been a big thanks to Hannah Fagan and her department with communications and marketing, and we're proud of how that's been progressing. For the other stuff, just to keep on the radar here, youth football, tackle, and flag football registration will be opening here towards the end of June. We're already starting to get a few questions about that, but that will be coming up soon. For the city campground, the big takeaway here, when we moved to Astra, that was our new platform coming into 2022. Again, we want to make all of our facilities more accessible and try to draw from more than just Jefferson County, make this more of a region draw. And so what they claimed to us was that they would increase occupancy and our reservations by 20%. Through the end of April, comparative to 2021 to now, we are up just about 23%. So far they're staying true to their word. We're getting more phone calls than ever, just people inquiring about us, people saying that they've never heard about it, but they'd love to stay. I think the furthest I've heard so far is New Zealand coming to stay with us. So it's very cool to see the dynamics and see logistically where all we're getting reservations from. There with the upgrades, some things that we've got going on, we're trying to reinvest back into the campground. That's something we've been kind of prophesizing about for the past couple of months here, about making investments back into these facilities so we can continue to generate that revenue. B&Z has completed work on a couple of concrete stairs. This goes from the river view campsites all the way down to the base where you may have picnics, you may have parking, you name it, just making that a little bit safer so that you don't have to travel around the outskirts. We are working on getting the rails installed on that, but the concrete work is finished. We've completed the interior painting of the bathhouse, and then we are going to be completing the exterior painting as well as doing a vintage sign, thanks to Nick Meacham at Madison Made. The other things that we have scheduled to be completed down there, epoxy flooring on 523 will be taking place. We've got a landscaping plan, thanks to Enviroscape, that will be completed by the end of June. The sites and the drive itself are getting patchwork resealed in 2 different phases at the end of May and beginning of June. And then, as I spoke about, vintage graphics, working with Tony Steinhardt on getting some permanent signage that's going to be very similar to what you see throughout town, with kind of a kiosk that shows the map layout of the campground itself, and then also kind of a welcome to the City of Madison campground. For Sunrise Golf Course, big thing coming up, we've got the Chamber of Commerce outing. I think I've already heard that they're looking at upwards of 30 teams participating this year. So if you get a chance, please stop by the golf course. There's going to be a lot of networking there, a lot of people, and excitement. So that was a great event last year, and we're looking forward to having that again this year. For kind of parks general, some questions that I've been getting recently, and we do have answers on now. With Hargan Matthews, I know that there's been some concerns from parents about a gate being installed down there. We did get confirmation today from Madison Ironworks that gate will be installed within the next 2 weeks. They have completed the work on getting that actually built, and then we will be installing that here very, very soon. And then the other thing with the Brown Gym, been working with Joe Smedley on that, repairing the chiller. I know, as Carla could attest, as an avid pickleball player, it's very toasty down there right now. Yeah. I think today I saw it was 92 degrees. So that chiller has been out for quite some time. We've just been waiting on the part to arrive. That got ordered several months ago. We got confirmation today that will be here on May 24th, and it'll take about 48 hours after the installation and for a building of that size to actually cool all the way down. But we are actively working on those couple of things. For the master plan, this is a 134-page document, and I've condensed that down to just 4 pages in that executive summary. Big thank you to Nicole Schell, the planning department, and then Ratio Design on help with this project. We submitted this to DNR on 4/15, And I am happy to say that over the weekend, we did receive feedback that the project has been approved. And so now we will be taking that to the park board president, and we will be able to approve all of that and start to implement our next 5-year plan. So very excited about that moving forward. And lastly, Crystal Beach. So I know that you all have probably heard that we will not be opening for the 2022 season due to the significant structural damage that was uncovered once the liner was removed. But going forward, we are actively working on a plan of action so that we can open that safely, repair it correctly, and reinvest for future generations so that the city of Madison can enjoy that for the next 20, 30, 40 years. But in the meantime, other pools that are open locally, we've been in contact with the 5 closest pools. Clifty and Versailles State Parks, you've got Carrollton, Kentucky has a public pool, North Vernon has a public pool, and then indoor aquatics, you've got VV with the YMCA. So I do ask you to please be patient with us, the community, as we work towards fixing this, but Crystal Beach is an absolute icon, and we're doing everything in our power to get that done properly. Council, do you have any questions for me?
Matt, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Have we thought about, I know that running the pool every month has a pretty big expense to it. Maybe using some of the monies that we thought about running the pool and using it to maybe coming up with a busing system with one of the local or regional pool areas. Just something so that our youth can find at least part of the week to
Yeah.
run to a pool.
That's something we've been discussing internally. I've already been in contact with a few people at the Madison High School. We'd like to try to get some other corporations involved with that, whether it be Girls Inc., Boys and Girls Clubs, something of that nature, maybe even Lifetime Resources if we're talking about maybe elderly people, not just focusing on youth, and trying to figure out a way that we can shift some of those financial resources to make accommodations for all. So yeah, that's something we'd like to work on.
Can you explain a little bit more about how the master plan and what DNR's role is in it and improving it?
Their role essentially is overseeing so that we can basically apply for grant funding through them. They will not award any municipality that is not actively enrolled within their master plan program, and it just kind of helps give some guidelines and parameters upon what our focus is and our goals are moving forward, so that they can make sure that everything is in line with what they see kind of as a whole as an organization. At the end of the day, they're focused on historic preservation, providing for communities quality of life, and so they want to make sure that those kind of goals align with the municipalities.
So I see the goals laid out. Are there any particular investments that are planned to be, for the grant money to be sought after through DNR, or?
It's going to depend on the sums of grant money and what all we want to do. I am working with Tony Steinhardt and Deputy Mayor McGee on a capital investment plan, and our goal through that and ideology is kind of to what we need to hit everything. If you take a walk around our parks, there's no secret. There's deferred maintenance that's been decades in the making. So quite frankly, I could go to every single park and say that there is something that needs to be done, some sort of investment that needs to be made to properly maintain that for the next generation. I don't know what that number is yet, but it's going to take and require a lot of grant funding to match that. Even if you go out and bond it, you get private donors, there's going to be a lot of capital to invest in that.
But we don't have that plan yet.
Not yet, no. That's going to be a very detailed plan. And right now it's kind of a wish list, and we're going to have to narrow our focus down too on what exactly that's going to entail, and it's going to take a lot of the public's input too on what do they want.
I don't know if we've put the master plan online yet. Is it already online for
If it's
viewing?
not online yet, it will be. We'll put that to the city's website.
Because it does do a park by park inventory of every park asset that we have, and it gives a condition report, and then there's also a list there of improvements we'd like to make. The capital planning side of it's different, which is, okay, how do we finance some of these improvements? How do we prioritize what we need to do over certain time periods, and then how do we finance it? But it's a cross-section of a lot of different things. Open space, parks we have, golf course, parks where there's tremendous amount of deferred maintenance, parks where we've already announced that we need to do prioritize, like Gaines Park and Oak Hill, for example, Mayor Welch, J.C. Park, all of those are due for upgrades. And now the capital planning process is to put a number and put a dollar amount to it, and really work toward achieving those priorities in the master park plan. It took a year to compile the master park plan for what DNR wanted, but it's a good exercise They don't go as far as we're going with regards to capital planning, because we're looking at, what's the capital planning citywide when we're looking at streets and sidewalks and parks and facilities and utilities, for example. The number is quite large, particularly when you're looking at assets with a tremendous amount of deferred maintenance. I mean, he mentioned the Brown Gym. To put air conditioning in the Brown Gym would be over $100,000. What you'll see more often than not is that zero money's been set aside for capital replacements. And that has been a nagging problem, which increases the price tag of making improvements on items that have been deferred, unfortunately. But we're going to tackle each one of these head on and create a priority list and then a plan to actually get them done.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Matt. All right, next up, Fire Chief Kenny Washer.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. In your package, you had our overview of our April runs. We were paged out to 26 incidents during the month of April, from structures to cars, EMR runs with KDH, and we had a few gas leaks during that time period also. Moving on to our training review, we did complete our training for our rope operations class during the month of April, and says we've logged 95 hours. That's a little short. We had 2 stations that were actually a few days late reporting, so that figure is going to be up around 115 hours actually. As I said, the operations class was completed in the month of April. That is a high and low angle operations class that teaches them safely how to anchor and recover people in various incidents. You'll also notice that most of our calls are to the state park. That's where we're called most to. Not all the time, most of the time. While they were out there training, they actually had a woman come up to the edge of the cliff and actually fell about 6 feet right beside them where they were training. So most of the time that's what it is. People are going where they don't need to be. But they got it handled without a problem. Upcoming things that we're going to be keying on in our training, we're doing a driver operator course. This is classroom as well as hands-on. We will set up a cone course, and they will have to complete both classroom and the cone course to be a qualified driver operator. The instructor is instructor 1 class. We need more instructors. The more instructors we have, the more classes we can put on and not work our instructors that we have now quite so hard. And the continuing officer education from lieutenant all the way up through myself. You'll also notice that during the month we installed smoke detectors. We installed 15 of those. Recently I've been having quite a few calls from Irish Hollow, which if you don't know where that is, that's down at the bottom of Hanging Rock Hill. We've had quite a few inquiries there, and Battalion Chief Conover is working on that, getting that program down in there started to help those people. And we've also completed 12 fire and building safety inspections, which our goal this year is to do many more of those than we did last year. And does the council have any questions for myself?
For those 95 hours or 115 hours, do you know what % of the members that covers for the ropes training course? Roughly?
That is probably roughly half of those hours is the rope operations.
Well, I meant how many members actually got the training?
6 members
6 members.
of Clifty 6. That is our rescue company. Whether it be car extrication or rope, that is our rescue company.
Okay.
With engine 1 assisting.
Chief, I think it'd be really interesting if you talk about the special expertise or apparatus at each of the fire companies, because they do each play an important but different and distinct role.
The city of Madison has rapid attack engines. Rapid attack engine would be engine 1, engine 2. Those companies are trained to get in there first and get it out. we will attack on tank water while they're hooking that engine to a water supply. That's their job. Engine 3 is a supply engine. It's an attack engine also, but one of their big jobs is supply. They carry 1,500 feet of 5-inch on there. That's a portable water main. I can lay that 5-inch from a hydrant 1,000 feet, support that hydrant, and it's just like having that hydrant in front of that house. So that's a big deal for us as engine 3. Tower 4. Everybody's seen the big green tower. They're a tower and rescue company. They're ventilation and rescue. That's their main job. Will they attack the fire? Sure. But on a major fire, their job is ventilation and rescue being a key part of it. Engine 5 is also water supply for District 2 and rapid attack. They carry a dual role. They also are a hazmat station. That's where our hazmat trailer and EMR truck are stationed, in the building right beside their station. And then Rescue 6 houses the rescue, which is a quad, which a quad is a rapid attack engine, but it also has a complete ground ladder assortment on it, the same as the tower or the Quint does. And the Quint is also housed in Station 6, which is our aerial device for the hilltop. Out of 6 stations, we're well diversified. We can do just about anything we need to do. There are a few things that we have talked about that we want to do. We have people that are certified in swiftwater and deep water rescue and various other things. We have hazmat. I'm a technician. I'm a hazmat tech. We have, I believe, 5 others that are hazmat tech. Everybody is working right now to being trained to the operations for hazmat. That's a state requirement. We have almost met that goal. We have, I think it's very few members yet to be trained to operations level, and we will have met that goal. So we are on the move. We do not want to stay stagnant. We want to move and improve the fire department.
As noted here, when they're not responding to all of the emergencies and also doing a lot of mutual assistance, because the fire departments both in Turtle County and Madison Township, they're trained. And with all of our public safety, law enforcement and fire are all in training for this response. Sorry, get my cues from the green room over there. Sorry about that. So
Close the curtain.
good job on all that. Any questions for Chief Washer? No one's going to ask who's going to win the water ball fight July 4th weekend? Kent, is that what you're saying, Gina?
Dream on.
Chief, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, well, now I'd like to adjourn the regular council meeting, and we'll call to order the public hearing regarding establishing waterworks rates and charges. Hopefully everybody has had an opportunity to sign in. Oh, way more people than we have signatures. Well, if anyone has not signed in, we're going to pass around another sign-in sheet, if you would, please. This is for compliance purposes. I'd like to add some structure and maybe a preamble to today's public hearing. At the last council meeting, we had a second reading of the ordinance, and we are having another opportunity for public comments. So tonight, we'll have another opportunity to receive statements from the public regarding our proposed ordinance to fund a $13 million investment in our clean drinking water infrastructure. In researching past council actions, there have only been 2 rate increases since 1999, the most recent occurring 14 years ago in 2008. For the last half century, the city of Madison has been relied upon to deliver up to nearly 800 million gallons a year of clean drinking water to a majority of the county, and after the current proposed work, the city of Madison will have a net investment of over $25 million to ensure that its over 6,000 residential, commercial, industrial, and county customers have a dependable and sustainable source of water. But to meet this growing demand and the contractual obligations we have with each county water reseller, we must invest to correct deferred maintenance issues and to properly fund the city's future utility operations for the benefit of all. On average, household users will experience less than a $6 per month rate increase to fund this investment, overcome the cumulative impact of inflation, which has been tremendous, and set aside future funds so that additional investment can occur without the need for more indebtedness. Nobody wants to increase water rates and charges, but this is an investment we need to make for the future of our city and county. For tonight's public hearing, I'd like to introduce our guests. Kevin Mulliken, Tracy Wine, Rob Bellucci, Matt Worth, and Brian Jackson, and use the following format. Public statements should be directed to council. Please be concise, and if there are easy questions, I will call on one of our guests to respond. After public statements, I will ask council if any of them have any statements or questions in this order: legal, scope of the project, or financial. After all public statements are heard, we will close the public hearing and move directly to the third reading of the ordinance. So now we'll open it up to the floor. We'll ask anybody who comes to the podium to introduce themselves, name and address, and make your statements, please, for council's benefit.
Hello, my name is David Ferguson. I'm on the DuPont board of water company, and I'll be speaking in behalf of Canaan and Rikers Ridge. We first of all like to say that we've had a good relationship with the water company and been very pleased with the water supply that we have received in the past. But as we look at this current rate study, we're very much against the 94.5% that is being allocated to us. We have had our consultants look at this, and they're here tonight, and I'll introduce you to them. From Baker Tilly, who has done a lot of utility work throughout the state of Indiana, and I think they were quoted at your last meeting. Doug Baldassar will be here for them, and then our Roger Curry from Curry Associates, an engineering group, will be here. He's here too to speak. There was two or three things that came up in your last meeting. One was the lack of opportunity that the rural water had to get other water sources. So we wanted to address that, and that's what Bob will be speaking to. And because if last thing we want to do is leave, but if we do, we don't want to leave you in a bad state, because we're 500, 600 net of your income proposed, and to lose that would be very dramatic to you guys, and we definitely don't want to put you in hardship there. So that's why we're presenting that tonight. The accounting side, Doug will be speaking of that, and where we think that this is not a fair, accurate statement to put this much on us. We have contracts in place that Doug will mention and go through that should limit it and should come in effect on this rate study, and it didn't. So I'll introduce Doug next, and he can speak to the accounting side.
Good evening, members of the council, mayor. Again, my name is Doug Baldassarian. I'm with Baker Tilly Municipal Advisors. I've been working rates and charges and financing here in Indiana for over 20 years, and I've done multiple studies, including wholesale rate studies for utilities such as the rural utilities. It took some time to review the study that was prepared for this proposed rate adjustment, and in my view, the proposed rates for the large users, including the rural water utilities, are excessive and discriminatory. They're not cost-based, based on as required by the Indiana statute, and without proper justification. As was pointed out, that there's a 95% increase for the largest users, and 79% for residential and other users. In reviewing the contracts, the proposed rates are not calculated in conformity with those outstanding contracts. And the rates and charges overall, I think, are not equitable and reasonable for those largest users. And then it does appear that the information is somewhat dated, even though there's attempts to update it. It was based on 2019 test year. So when I say contract requirements, what am I talking about? Section 5 of the contract, the contracts, each one of them has their own contract, says that any increase or decrease in rates shall be based on demonstrable increase or decrease in the cost of performance hereunder, but such costs shall not include increased capitalization of the seller's system. The project was not allocated to the adjustment to the bottom block, but the full amount of the annual capital improvement plan was. In all the studies I've been involved with, that there should be some allocation of that to what benefits those wholesale or large users. Section B1 says, except as otherwise provided herein, the rates and charges charged by the seller shall not be altered except as the water rates for all customers are altered. And as I pointed out before, there's a 95% increase to the largest users, which include those rurals, and 79% to residential and others. So that, to me, doesn't seem to fit that. I looked at also the adjustment to the bottom block, which is there's 4 rate tiers, as I'm sure you're well aware of, and the water rates decrease as you go through and use more, and this is the rate block that's over 50,000 gallons per month. And it does not appear to follow cost of service principles promulgated by the AWWA. Base costs are what you would normally use for calculating of a reasonableness of a bottom block, normally include costs related to providing service to customers under average load or just steady usage, without the costs for peaks and variations. And much of your water infrastructure is built to handle peaks and fire protection and other things, which in our view should not be included in that base cost. I didn't see a real study. There was some allocations there. Many and most of these that are all of them that I've been involved with or studied, there's plan allocations to come up with what's allocated to these largest users. And all in all, of the operation maintenance expense and the capital improvement plan, 81% of those costs are allocated to the bottom block. Normally, we would see more of a 40 to 50% based on what is needed to provide that base service. So if you were to adjust that from 81% to 40% or 50%, that resulting bottom block would be more like $1.41 or $1.76 as opposed to the $2.86 that is being proposed. Other concerns, and maybe this is going to be taken into account, but there's a new law passed, the utility receipts tax needs to be removed and the rates need to be reduced. $1 million grant from the county not factored in. Multi-user revenues calculated incorrectly. And then we will be requesting additional information to look into these calculations further. I certainly didn't have enough information to really calculate what we think it should be. But so in summary, I think the proposed bottom block is did not have a proper cost study prepared, and is discriminatory to the large users. The rates and charges were not calculated in conformity with outstanding wholesale agreements, and so that those overall rates are discriminatory. And in my view, a revised cost of service study should be completed before adopting the rates. And finally, in relation to another source of water, to my understanding, there is another possible source. The revenues to be generated about $700,000 per year from the rural utilities, and if they were to leave, there are some variable costs that would go away. So if you assume there's 100,000 and you would lose $600,000 of revenue, that would result in an extra 50% increase on your other residents' rates. Seems to me a better result would be to calculate a reasonable rate for the rural utilities and keep everyone on the same system. With that, I will leave this to Bob Kurt.
Thank you, Vic.
Good evening, council members. My name is Robert Curry. I'm with Curry and Associates. Our firm's been in business for 44 years. We've practiced waterworks engineering all over the southeastern and south central part of the state of Indiana. And we represented the three water utilities that have the concern about the rate increase. And they contacted me, asked me to review their situation and tell them if they had any possible recourse in terms of an alternate source of water. And let me suggest to you, first of all, that over the years that I've worked with these three utilities, they have received outstanding water service from the city of Madison. The city of Madison historically has been a very, very good neighbor to the rural water companies. And for that, I'm grateful, and I think the rural water companies are as well. But as we look at the situation, if there is an issue that cannot be resolved, and I think almost any issue can be resolved, but if the issues cannot be resolved, then there is an alternative way for the three water utilities to receive water. And I think the importance of them receiving water from an alternate source is, first of all, the initial rate that's in disagreement, but secondly, there needs to be some ongoing assurance that they will not see rates that perhaps are not cost justified, cost based. They need some reassurance going forward that that would not happen. But again, I think that all of the issues that are between the between the city and the three utilities can be resolved through mutual discussion. But the engineering certainly can be done to furnish them water from an alternate source, and it can be done for a cost, what appears to be a cost that would be equal to or less than the cost of purchasing water from Madison. So with that, does anyone have any questions? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Robert. Anyone else like to address council?
Yes. I'm Warren Oxer from Hanover, Indiana. I have been a director and treasurer for Kent Water for approximately 40 years, and sharing low information, very familiar with water operations, cost of operations, so forth. In that 40 years, I personally oversaw approximately 40 budgets and oversaw 3 rate increases during the period of time. When I first became involved with Kent Water, they had approximately $2 million in assets and $1.5 million in debt. As of today, they have over $8 million in assets and $0 in debt. So I have a lot of experience on looking at the water rate side of it and so forth. First, I'd want to state I support Madison's overall rate increase. I absolutely see the need for the infrastructure improvements that they're making, and so forth. Some of the reason is maintenance hasn't been done for quite a few years. The rates should have been increased many years ago, which is neither here or there now. I also have some empathy, though, probably for the reason the rates weren't raised 4 or 5 years ago. The city has also had to deal a great deal with sanitary sewer expense that they were mandated to do under government mandates, and so they were having rate increases there that they absolutely couldn't avoid, and so much attention to management to go around as well. I can understand how the water rates and the maintenance was neglected. But the main thing that comes down on the raised rates that are being proposed, they are not equitable to the rural water utilities. There is too much cost being attributed to them that should not be. And the situation that it's going to end in, if it remains the same as it is very likely that the city will lose the rural water utilities as customers. They will have to seek alternative sources, especially if they get locked into the same methodology that was done on creating these rates to create the next set of rate increases. And those increases are coming. There's already other phases of projects that will be coming. If that would happen, I want to emphasize the current rates would generate somewhere in the neighborhood of $700,000 or more for the city. If the rules stopped buying tomorrow, your expenses would probably drop less than $200,000 at the very most. You're going to have the cost of electric for the pumpage, you're going to have the wear and tear and maintenance on the pumps, and you're going to have some chemicals that go down. But overall, the rest of your rest of the expenses are going to remain the same. May shut down a well, may reduce a treatment facility, but very, very little change overall. So as pointed out, you're going to have $500,000 less money to use towards your water system. And that is not a good thing. The water utilities, in order to have an alternate source, they're going to have to make quite a capital investment to do that. I would rather see, instead of a duplication of capital investment, I would rather see an equitable rate be established between the city and the rural utilities to proceed. Overall, it is not in the city's best interest or the rural utilities to have to duplicate several $1 million in infrastructure in order to buy water at the price that is equitable to them. You know, in simple terms, when you look at your rates, your direct costs currently, direct information from your rate study, direct cost of production, ballpark figure is costing 70 cents a thousand, and you're charging $1.47 in 2019. That was about 108% markup. From the rate study, with all the inflated costs just on the direct costs, electric, chemicals, wear and tear on pumps and maintenance, you're looking at an increase to about 88 cents. But your markup goes from 108% to 224%. Currently, you mark up the direct cost of production, and you don't think about it, there's many other things that go in, but on those numbers, it's 108% markup. Under this new proposal, it's going to be 224%. The Kent Water currently sells water to the town of Hanover and Hanover College. We wholesale water to them for $1.35 a gallon. We are due for a rate increase, but we will be looking somewhere in the neighborhood of a 20% increase on those rates. Nothing along the lines that I see that justifies it. But the problem you have in all this is, how do we get from where we're at? This is kind of like, water rate studies are a little bit like getting an appraisal done. And you have a seller that gets his appraisal, and you have the buyer that gets an appraisal. And they may be totally different numbers. There isn't necessarily one that's absolutely right and one that's absolutely wrong. But once that seller, in this case, the city of Madison, has came up with their rate, you know, how can they back off? How can the mayor and his experts save face? You know, they're bought into this. But someone needs to slow down, take a look at it, and actually give an opportunity to have some conversation take place. The rural water utilities were not able to be a part of this rate study. They could not start any work on it until the rate study was completed and made available to them. Their input wasn't sought. They weren't consulted with. They did know Madison was doing a rate study, but they had no input into that study. So I ask you, please slow down. Give an opportunity to do what's best. I know you need to protect the interest rate, but there is still time to negotiate and come up with something that works a little better. Usually anytime you look at the seller's appraisal and you look at the buyer's appraisal, there's probably some room there in the middle. Thank you.
Thank you, Warren. Anybody else?
David Bramer, Jefferson County Commissioner, Hanover, Indiana. I know there's been some discussion, maybe some lack of communication, but we have had an official vote by the county council to approve $1 million to the city of Madison for their water project. And so I think it's worthwhile examining what that will do for the rates. I know there's some other things to think about as far as concerning the rates, but you know, it took time to get to those numbers. We had to make sure that our backup information was correct when we were distributing it among the other water users or water companies in the county. So, but I just wanted to make it official, because I was been told that it hasn't been made official, but now it's official. There's $1 million that the county will give from the ARP funds towards the water project here in Madison. Okay? So, if you have any questions, let me know. You know where to get a hold of me.
Commissioner, maybe talk about the timing that's remaining on the
well,
final
so I mean,
for the ARP?
it's advertised now, and it'll be available in June 14th meeting. So that's the one thing that it was approved on May 10th, and then the next meeting for the council is the 14th.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate it. Any questions for Commissioner? Okay. Sorry. Anyone else? Thank you, Dave. Anybody else would like to address council?
Hello, I'm Bob Hartsaw, 806 West 2nd Street in Madison. And I would like to address something I brought up earlier after hearing millions of dollars discussed.
May I ask you to hit your mic button there, please? Nope, it's right there. But thank you very much.
Did that do it? Okay, pardon me. We discussed the minimum rates and those impacts on single-family households and on the retired, the elderly. I do believe that increasing the minimum usage rate to 2,000 gallons is a little bit of a reach. There are other ways to accommodate that situation. The prior was 2,000 gallons. One of the things I looked at, and I didn't have full information, but a possibility would be to increase that first tier of 2,000 gallons by 58 cents. But it appears that we may be in a point of having to rework all those issues anyway. But please consider what impact that is on the single individual. Okay, for me, it's, make it 75 bucks, I'll pay it. But it does have an impact on those in limited income in tight circumstances. And I do not envy you the decisions you're making, okay? But best of luck, and with confidence, you'll come to the right decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I do want to address what he said about the minimum rates, and I mentioned earlier that the city of Madison, that we went back and looked at council action over the last 20 or 30 years, and the city of Madison utility was ordered by a state regulatory agency to increase its minimum from 2,000 to 3,000 gallons back in 1986. So I just want to clarify how that number became 3,000. That was in 1986. Bob. Yeah, you're welcome. Anyone else? Anyone else would like to address council? Okay, we'll go to council. Mentioned earlier, if we could format the discussion legal, scope of project, or financial. I think that the second reading we did a lot with regards to all three of those, but we'll open the floor up to council now.
I know it's taken a while for the county to finalize their contribution towards this project, and I'd like to know now that that is official, that money is going to be available for us to use for that. What are we going to do moving forward with that?
Well, I think there's a couple of issues there, and Bob can address that as well, but I think number one, we have to figure out exactly how we can use it, because there are certain parameters with regard to that funding with which to deal with projects. And one of them is it cannot be used to pay back bonds.
Yeah, it can't be used for reserves or debt service or different reasons. But I want to thank the commissioners for all the work they've done on this. And we've had lots of discussions over the course of the past year, and most recently over the course of the past 30 to 45 days. So I do appreciate the commitment, and it will definitely be factored in. We did some estimates for the commissioners as they were evaluating and kind of refining that number, but we do need to get with our accounting firm on the rates and see how that gets interpolated in and what impact that will have from the contribution.
Yeah, and the one thing that I did check after we had kind of learned, or we were even in the process of talking about this, is if rates are going to be ratcheted down, you don't have to go through this same process. And because they're going down and not up, there's a different process with regard to amending and things like that. So if they're, depending on how it's applied and where it's applied and how it affects the rates can be ratcheted down based upon
that.
So to answer your question more directly, it will be taken in consideration.
How long do we have to finalize these rates before we would lose the current interest rate that we've been able to lock in?
I'm going to ask Brian Brian or Rob to address the SRF financing, which we've already been, our PER's already been approved, as we talked about the last time. And now they're in the process of publishing their priority project list, which we anticipate being on it. And that really starts the whole process towards the end of August. But Rob?
We've had preliminary discussions with the Indiana Finance Authority and their SRF program, which is who we've made application to fund the project. Right now, we're targeting an initial closing date this fall. I want to say end of September. So that's where it's at on their radar, and they'll identify an interest rate accordingly.
So whether we approved a rate increase today or 2 weeks or 4 weeks from now would have no bearing on that interest rate?
And Kevin can also speak to this. We have to have our rates in place at the time we close.
In addition to permitting.
Yeah, permitting, design. We'll have
everything has to be done. What he's describing is, the trajectory we've been on has been a pretty fixed schedule with council and with IFA and with Commonwealth and with this council, so that we could get to that closing date in order to be ready to close and preserve that interest rate. And in order to do that, you have to have the scope of work completed. You have to have the PER approved.
Yeah,
We've gone through the grant process to identify what grants would be available out there. So we've looked for other sources of money. And we also have to do permitting, bidding as well, and be ready to close. So when he's saying early or September, there's still a tremendous amount of work that has to happen between here and there. Not only do we have to finish the bidding process and scope of work, but we'll have to demonstrate that we can pay back the loan that IFA is going to be making to us.
Would a delay of 2 or 4 weeks cause any issues?
We have to be, in order to meet the schedule that we've outlined with the funding agency, we have to be full steam ahead and have this project bid and ready to sign contracts, in fall.
However, would a delay of 2 to 4 weeks on action by the city council to approve these rates cause a delay in that process?
I'll go back to my initial comment. Before we can close on our financing, we have to have our rates in place.
When is fall?
We have to go through underwriting.
What's the date of fall?
September. That's the initial schedule.
Do we need these rates in place to move forward with the other aspects of this bond, with bidding, with permits, et cetera?
That's your call, because the utility's funding everything up front.
Right now, we're funding these soft costs out of pocket. So we're already incurring hundreds of thousands of dollars of costs in order to prepare for that closing, at which time we would be reimbursed. So I wouldn't inject uncertainty in that process. What I will say is that one of the things that we should propose tonight, based on all the information we've gathered, because I will say that there was a lot of assertions but no information. I'd like to have maybe Doug and Bob supply us with information that supports some of the assertions that they're making. We can work through that with Tracy and Kevin. But what that really means is we can change the effective date of our ordinance, so that right now our rates are effective immediately upon approval by council, and after this public hearing closes, we'll go to third reading for a vote on that. What we can do is amend the ordinance for a later effective date, which will allow us then an opportunity to see if there's any additional information, interpolate in the county's commitment to the project, and determine what the impact is on the rate tiers. Remember, there are 4 rate tiers here, so it's not going to have a uniform effect on every rate tier, but it has to be modeled up.
Yeah, one issue that there is tonight is you're at third reading, and there's no authority in our rules to table anything on third reading.
And so it's either an up or down vote, or you can amend it by unanimous consent. And so that's one of the, per our rules, per the rules of the city council, that's one of the issues you have. But there is what the mayor alluded to with by amending the effective date, it would allow potentially to, amend the ordinance after it's passed, because that can always be done as well.
How long do you think it'll take to work with the county to negotiate? It was gonna take 6 weeks for 3 readings in a future ordinance to bring the rates back down, if that's what we do.
Well, it wouldn't take that long for a rate reduction, but I'm presuming there's going to be a form of interlocal agreement. It's going to be required for the sharing of the ARP monies.
It could be.
But it can be accelerated.
Yeah, it could be accelerated due to, suspending the rules and different things like that. But I think the other thing that's important to remember here is, there's a request here to lower rates on the rural water users. And and Kevin can tell me this, but it's a teeter-totter effect. If you lower the rates on the rural water users or the larger users or whoever you want to use it, they're going to go up on some other users because the money has to be paid back. It doesn't make any difference. The money's got to be paid, but if you lower one, somebody else has to go up. So that's kind of the way.
There's, as Joe's alluding to, there's over 6,000 customers, all of whom have to be taken into consideration with all of these variables.
Yeah.
And there's over 70 that are in the same bracket category as the rural water companies. So it's not, there's no way to engineer a rate reduction for 3 water companies, is what Joe's getting at. But what we can do is take the information, evaluate it, see what impact it has, delay the effectiveness of the date of the rates that we would approve today, and then come back with an amendment to the rate, to the brackets.
Crudely accurate.
Close enough.
So did the rural water users try to reach out to our rate consultant and the city to schedule this meeting to have this conversation prior to tonight?
They're here, ask them.
Well,
I think that's
Mayor,
you're-
do we know if the rural waters, did they reach out to you or Brian or our rate consultant and ask for time to meet with our rate consultant and review the study?
So we had meetings all throughout the course of a year with representatives from each of the water companies. And when I say that, when I'm meeting with a member of the board, I presume I'm meeting with somebody that's going to communicate to the rest of the board. That, as you know, the water rate study process had been in various forms with a lot of data gathering over the course of a year. After the initial rates were published to the commissioners, because they needed that in order to continue processing their decision on what commitment they would want to make to the water project, the full rate study was released and they had that. And yes, they wanted to meet with our rate consultant. We felt it was more productive that they provide us with the questions that they want answered, and we responded to all the questions that was provided.
So the rate study was sent to the rural water users, rural water resellers?
Yes, so we had a public records request from Mr. Oxshire. He shared it with all the 3 water companies, to my understanding. And then when we met as a follow-up, after the full water rate study was completed and published, each of the representatives of the water company had a full copy of the water rate study.
So the city didn't provide one to them directly?
Well, we had it available when we met with them, but they already had been provided a copy.
Okay.
Council, any other comments or questions?
Just a general comment about this whole process. I'm disappointed with how this rate study, this rate increase process has come about. I think there's been, to an extent, a lack of transparency regarding all of it. Council was given very little chance for input prior to being presented with all of this. Actually, none, as far as I know, no chance for input. And then the apparent lack of conversation with the three largest customers that our water utility has. All of that being said, we still need a large investment in our water utility. We have massive infrastructure needs. But it's just disappointing the way this process has played out. Thank you.
I'm sorry you feel that way. I believe that we've worked very hard on something very complicated over a long period of time that has a lot of moving parts to it. And we did have many conversations. And we did reach out to the public. We definitely wanted to let everybody know that this was coming. We kept council informed on that. Each council member was briefed and had an opportunity to turn page by page the water rate study and ask any questions that they wanted to be answered by our rate consultants.
We had a chance to ask questions, yeah, but we had no chance for input into the project itself, when we are the ones who are ultimately responsible for approving the financing that goes into this.
I mean, if there was additional information that you wanted, we provided it to you once the water rate study was completed and ready to be discussed.
I would echo Councilman Tevenall's concerns that there wasn't an opportunity for discussion. It was more, here's what we're doing. And then when there was pushback to say, hey, can we delay a second reading until tonight when we have the public hearing and other opportunities to meet with our rural waters, there was no discussion. It was, quite frankly, what you wanted. And that's what we did.
Well,
and that's why we're here tonight still discussing that our rural resellers, who are a huge chunk of our revenue, are getting hit with 95%, and there's no discussion now.
Well, that's not a fair
Is it true?
evaluation.
True?
I don't believe, no. We had multiple conversations with commissioners, with representatives from each of the rural water companies. There's a tremendous amount of data that was collected. We actually published the draft rates to the commissioners before we finished the water rate study. Again, all of our goal over the course of the past year was to defray the cost of the investment. We spent months, countless months, applying for additional grant sources, working on this rate study, refining it. Nobody wants to pay more for anything. But when you have a 20-year lag in an investment, and you have a 14-year lag in rates, and you have a cumulative impact of inflation, at some point we have to say we need to make the right amount of investment for the future. And one of the things that I'll mention too is we don't have any plans for a future rate increase. We are trying to refine our approach and methodology so we have enough working capital to make the right investment going forward without the need for future indebtedness. Now, can we ignore the impact of inflation? No. As we've talked about, current inflation rates over the next 4 years are going to pass what they've been cumulatively for the last 14 years. So we need to figure out a way that we can do quicker transfer pricing to deal with the cost of inflation, because we're not immune to inflation. Our costs go up every single year: labor, materials, equipment needs. But what we have now is, for literally a few dollars a month spread out over thousands of customers, we can properly capitalize our water utility. And that is what's required by law, that you have it be fiscally and physically sound. So, if you guys feel like communication hasn't been good, I mean, I feel like we've done nothing but talk about water for the last year and then try to come up with the proper scope of work for 2 years so that we can deal with these urgent issues and critical needs, so we can continue to provide 800 million gallons of clean drinking water to the majority of the county, and honor our contractual obligations that we have with the county water resellers, as well as the residential and commercial users too. But I do think that one thing that council should consider tonight is changing the effective date of the ordinance to July 1st, so that we can look at the impact from the county's commitment that they're going to be approving in June. We can figure out how we document that. We can also ask Baker Tilly for additional information under which he made some remarks tonight. I think that's fair.
And frankly, there's the tax.
And we do need, so,
Yeah.
yes, there was the repeal of the utility receipts tax, which will have a very, very minor impact on the utility rates. But it can be interpolated in there, and there are 4 brackets, all of which those users need to be evaluated. But like we said earlier, we can't target a reduction in rate just for the county water resellers. That would be discriminatory, candidly. We have to look at all of our users and across the 4 brackets. And there are things inside the 4 brackets, for example, or the first 3 brackets that's absorbed, that's not paid for out of the 4th bracket. I will make this comparison. The last time we approved rates was 2008, and when those rates were approved without objection, I'm assuming, the county water reseller rate per 1,000 gallons was 38% less than the average City Madison household. Now it's 33%. We keep talking about percentages, but in real dollars and cents, it's not a dramatic impact on each household. I'm assuming that each of the county water resellers would also have an opportunity to just pass along the cost increase without a markup. But that's up to them. That's up to their rate study. It's up to their operations. It's up to their board to decide how they want to pass along costs. Our water rates are literally some of the lowest in the entire state. And candidly, that is one of the reasons why we are having difficulty capitalizing these major capital expenditures that we have to make. Nobody wants to do it. Mayor Welch spent almost his entire 2 terms dealing with sewer sanitation issues. And that involved 3 rate increases before that court order was extinguished. We've already talked about the solid waste disposal issues that we have. We'll have to do the same thing in a few years for that. But with the approach we're taking here and the methodology, we can properly capitalize our water utility business so that it provides enough funding for the current and future investments without future indebtedness. What we are having to do now, because of the lack of investment and lack of raising our rates over such a long period of time, is borrow $13 million. Opportunity is that there's low-cost money out there still, assuming we can meet schedule. So I think that, again, we've worked really hard to get to where we are today, and there's always going to be differences in opinion, and one universal truth is nobody wants to pay more, but unfortunately that's unachievable unless you have small incremental increases over a period of time rather than these monumental ones that we found ourselves in after 14 years of. Well, keep in mind too, I want to reiterate, we've only increased our rates 2 times since 1999. Costs go up in real time. Municipalities are set up to struggle because we cannot adjust our revenue stream very quickly on any front. But that's the opportunity. That's why we're doing what we're doing and how we're doing it now. And sharing the cost of this investment is the responsibility of every single user, because it's not supported by property taxes. It's only supported by user fees.
I don't think any of us are suggesting that we create a special rate for the county water resellers. It would have been better for the whole process to have had more discussions with them and factored all of that into the original rate study going forward. However, I do understand and appreciate your point about properly funding our water department. I do want to thank Brian for the work he's put in putting this together, and I do believe he's put together a good plan for the city. And from a business perspective, we do have to act on this now. Interest rates are good. The investment needs to be made now because the cost will only continue to go up. As far as the effective date of July 1st, is that, this is a question's geared toward representatives from the county commissioners and the county water resellers. Is that enough time, do you believe, to properly go over all of this and make sure we can get it factored in if need be?
Might ask you to come to the podium so we can, because we are recording the meeting. Thank you, David.
It depends on how timely we get the information.
Your mic, please. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
It would depend on how quickly we get the information upon our request. We can't request it 1 week and then not get the information the following week or 2 weeks later. It'd have to be very promptly because we're on a timeline. So that would be the biggest thing. And so if we can get prompt information back to us, then we could probably, the July 15th is probably a little more favorable than July 1st because we're halfway through this month for the most sake, so I don't know if that's a possibility or not, but and comment on a few things why I'm up here. I'm sorry if this is out of order, but when we did get our information, we did ask to speak. And the mayor, I had a conversation with the mayor about speaking to the consultant, and he agreed. And he was actually going to try to attend, but he had a meeting. And then we reached out to, as long as Kevin would agree. And Kevin agreed as long as the mayor would allow him to come. And then when we pushed a little further, then we got the information that it had to be in a written format. When we requested a 24-hour return of answers, and that didn't happen. We did get all our questions answered, and we appreciate that. But the other thing that we're not talking about is not being fair to the rules or whoever, the big water users. We do have a contract in place, and it was addressed. And it's got another 10 or so years on it. And part of that says you can't add to our rates capitalizations costs. And that's not been addressed to that. So we're not asking for an unfair, we're asking what we have an agreement upon. And that agreement upon, as Doug presented, in section, I think it's section 5C, I think it is, or whatever, that's what is stated. So there's other things that are factoring in here, but the more time if we would have had it, it would have been better for us to work with you guys. So, thank you.
Brian, what, billing-wise, what would work best for your office for an effective date?
July 1st will work because we actually bill in arrears, so I actually won't make the changes until sometime in August. So that date's not as important as, if you go to August, then it becomes more difficult for me because then I won't make the changes until September. That's why July 1st, and I say July 1st, I don't know what day of the week that is, but your first meeting in July is the 5th, July 5th. I assume that's because the 4th is Monday, so there won't be any meeting.
Actually, I believe it's the 12th.
Yeah.
Oh, is it 12th?
It's the first Tuesday after the first Monday.
Okay, you're right. It is the 12th. Ugh. That's a great day to have it too, because I'm going to be on vacation. No, and the 12th is fine too. I just need to be able, because once we do this, then I've got to modify the rates, and I would rather.
Hold on, it would be July 5th. It doesn't make any difference because Monday's a holiday. It's just a holiday.
Okay, so it is July 5th. Okay, I'm fine with that. Because that, like I said, I won't be changing the billing stuff, and I really don't want to have them change all the rates twice. Because as he said, once we take into account the $1 million we're going to get, and the utilities receipts tax, and some of the stuff that we're going to garner from the rate consultants, and I mean, he was wanting our information. We really want his information. I mean, I don't know how his accountant came up with his numbers, or the contractor came up with his stuff. And I mean, and to me, that capitalization, I have those contracts. The way I read the capitalization part in that was an improvement in your water system, building a new water tower, adding something to our water system. Now, I'm no accountant, so I'm not really sure on that. But the way I looked at the capitalization and interpreted it, I just Googled it. But and like I said, that's up to an accountant to figure that out. but the July 5th date would work, because I really won't make the changes until August to do that. But once we pass it here, then we can keep moving forward, because then the SRF, we can tell them we're going ahead with the project, we've got them approved. The only thing, now just keep in mind, when we modify these and take them down, that's gonna have to approved by them, because they're the people loaning us the money. Just like with any other thing, when you borrow money, you can't change what you're doing without getting approval from the person giving you the money. I don't think that's gonna be an issue, because I think once you show that you can cover your debt, they're okay.
So would there be any objection to July 15th as?
July 5th.
Well, Mr. Ferguson said July 15th would work well for them. Would that, I mean, that would give us time to get through our meeting and if need be, if we had to have a special meeting or something.
I guess that would that affect your billing cycle?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I hope not. I'm saying July 5th, assuming everything's gonna go well. I can't answer questions. Assuming everything goes perfect, we get the bids in time, I can't answer that, Patrick. I don't know. I hope July 5th is soon enough. If you want to put it off to July 19th, that's the next meeting, it may be soon enough, but I'm not putting that on my shoulders.
Well, no, what my concern is more for ease of billing within your office for making the transition. And then also, I guess this is more of a technical question or legal question. If we pass this today and the effective date is not until July 5th or the 19th.
Right, whatever day.
Would that cause any issues with the financing or with, no problem?
No, I think they want to see, I'm speaking for them, but I think they want to see that it passes right. And then, like he said, Joe said, it's a lot easier to reduce rates. I don't think we're going to get any opposition when we come back and say, well, we're going to put this money here. We've looked at what they've got. We know the utilities receipts tax has to come down, and we're going to raise it X amount in each tier. But we're obviously not at that point, but we have to keep going where we are to reduce the new rates, because we don't have those yet.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay, thank you.
That's all I got.
I mean, the generous $1 million from the county, certainly, that's like 7.7% of our total budget. That's certainly going to affect the rate in a positive manner. We just don't know at this point what. So by pushing back the effective date, we should know the rate study, or what the rates might change to.
That's why we proposed changing the effective date, so that we could take this information into consideration and under advisement, and appreciate all the comments today, and see how it affects the different brackets.
Yeah, that really shouldn't take that long, should it, Kevin?
So, Joe, you mentioned that you couldn't take that $1 million and pay off the bonds, but could we take that off the top end? I mean,
Yeah, that's what we need to do and see, because that's not.
You have to spend the money. ARP requires you to spend the
you have
money.
to spend the money by a certain time, and we just have to make sure that we're spending it in accordance with what their rules are.
and can it go to operating costs, or do we know that yet?
I don't know that just right off hand.
Most likely, Councilman, it will reduce the net borrowing. That's the goal
That's what
here.
I'm wondering,
And that
yeah.
will change the debt service, and that could definitely interpolate the different brackets.
Yep.
The debt service wasn't included in the base rate calculation.
For the first 3 tiers, it was, but not in the large water user tier. It was not. There's no debt service in that category.
So it wouldn't change the rate
It'll
study.
change the
in
first
that
3 tiers
for
of
the
which
first
everybody
3.
participates in,
Yeah.
if it's debt service related. That's why we've got a regulatory overlay to figuring out how that money gets spent.
So one other comment, if you look at, assuming that there is no markup, as you mentioned earlier, and if we're looking at a 3,000 gallon user, every city user is gonna see a $5.64 increase on their bill at 3,000 gallons. The county users are gonna see a $4.17 increase on their bill if they're assuming equal usage, so.
Correct.
35% less increase for a county water user than a city water user, based on these rates today. So,
Correct.
And city
unless
user,
there's a markup.
city user also has the increase in hydrant fees as well.
Didn't account for the hydrant fees, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's a small figure. for the
Another
hydrant
$1.14.
fees.
So you're saying that the rural waters shouldn't pass on an increase?
Why would they, they're not doing any capital.
So we just want
improvements.
them to pass the cost on?
Pass through cost.
That's their choice. They can mark it up or not mark it up.
There's
They
no
can-
operational cost increase for that.
Yeah.
That's their business to run.
Initial comments or questions from council? Okay, hearing none, let's close the public hearing and reconvene our regular council meeting.
Okay, we have two bills on third reading. The first bill is ordinance number 2022-5, and that's an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Madison, Indiana, amending certain portions of the City of Madison Port Authority ordinance as found in Chapter 33 of the City of Madison Municipal Code. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Dan DiTillo,
Yes.
Bartlett,
Yes.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Krebs,
Yes.
and Chatham.
Yes.
Now, the next one is ordinance number 2022-6, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Madison, Indiana, to repeal and replace sections 52.20 through 52.26 of the City of Madison Code of Ordinances establishing rates and charges for the use and services rendered by the City of Madison Waterworks System of the City of Madison, Indiana. And there was a discussion about potentially amending the effective date, which is found in section 50, or it's just found there at the end. 5228, section 3. And so if that is what the council wants to do, page 8.
I move that we amend the effective date as stated in the ordinance to July 1st.
I'll second.
Okay. Is there any comment on that from the council?
I wonder if that's enough time, as we discussed earlier. I don't see it hurting if we delayed it until our second meeting, which would be that would be the 19th, or the 15th as requested by the county water resellers. My suggestion would be to,
Councilman Barlow, would you want to amend your motion for effective date of July 15th?
I'll amend my motion to be effective July 15th.
Okay, do we have a
I'll second the amendment.
Okay. Any other discussion from the council? Any discussion from the audience? Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay, that passed unanimously, so that can be amended. And so we are now on, we've had the third reading, and we need a roll call vote on ordinance number 2022-6.
Bartlett,
Yes.
Krebs,
Yes.
Dan DiTillo,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Schaefer,
Yes.
and Chatham.
Yes.
In council.
We have two bills on second reading, and those are ordinance number 22-7, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Madison, Indiana, establishing an economic development non-reverting fund. And this is dealing with, looks like funds contained in the account for the redevelopment commission to obtain.
We'll invite Deputy Mayor McGee up here if there's any questions on that ordinance with regard to the Economic Development Fund.
Are there any questions from the council on that? Any questions from the audience? Hearing,
Would council want to entertain a motion to suspend rules and go to third reading on that ordinance?
I'd move that we suspend the rules and go to third reading.
I second it. I second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll move on to the third reading.
Thank you, Council.
And that is on ordinance number 2022-7, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Madison, Indiana, establishing an economic development non-reverting fund. Can we have a roll call vote?
Sorry.
Yep.
Dan Datillo,
Yes.
Jim Bartlett,
Yes.
Josh Schaefer,
Yes.
Curtis Chatham,
Yes.
Carly Craig,
Yes.
Patrick Kevin.
Yes.
And the next ordinance on second reading is ordinance number 2022-8, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Madison, Indiana, vacating a right-of-way in the City of Madison, Indiana. And this is what Mr. Bruns was here on his alley.
John, may I ask you to come up to the podium? We'll
So are there any
answer
questions?
questions for you.
Is there any questions from the council on this? Any questions from the audience?
I'll just say generally, I have some concerns about vacating city right-of-ways to private individuals. I appreciate your investment in this property, and it's much needed. And the city has supported you generously with a PACE award as well. My biggest concern is more long-term with whatever the development that may come at Heritage Park. We may need this for road widening, sidewalks, something or the other, which is why I'm hesitant to vote in favor of vacating this right away.
There's a process with regards to these types of requests. It's gone through all the process. Board of Public Works, first evaluation by our utility department, make sure that there aren't any water lines in that area that needed to be maintained. And as you know, that is an area that's a targeted revitalization area, and we do appreciate Mr. Brunn's investment there, as well as the other investments that's occurring in that neighborhood, raising property values and bringing dilapidated structures to life. So appreciate John's investment there.
Any other questions or comments?
Is there any council that would like to recommend going to suspending the rules and going to third reading?
I'll move that we suspend the rules and move on to third reading.
Second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Let's have third reading. Ordinance number 2022-8, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Madison, Indiana, vacating the right-of-way of the City of Madison, Indiana. Roll call vote.
Dan Datillo,
Yes.
Jim Bartlett,
Yes.
Curtis Chatham,
Yes.
Josh Schaefer,
Yes.
Carly Craig,
Yes.
and Patrick Kevin.
John, thank you. Appreciate it, sir. All right, thank you, council. Is there any miscellaneous topics council would like to bring to our attention today? Hearing none, we'll move on to public comments. Anybody here in the audience who would like to address council or the mayor's office? Ask you to come to the podium and identify yourself. And here's someone who needs no identifying. 'Cause
Exactly. So, I like to do the shout outs and the good news items. So we missed one when Matt was up here. And so I was like, I'm going to say this and let Carla extend on this. It's awesome when you get to spend the day with a council member who cares about what her role is. So I got a text from Carla one day and she said, will you walk and do the parks with me? Because she's on the parks board, and I love that she has a passion for that too. So we walked and we did the parks. I think we accomplished 10 or 11 that day. And I was down at Pearl Park, not one of the ones that we had gone to that day. doing a Facebook Live, because I'm trying to like spread Madison all over town with my rose-colored glasses on. And so, doing that, Bill Barnes was watching my Facebook Live video. And I only know Bill to say hello, walking down the street. I kind of maybe know a little bit about his job, but not a lot. And so as soon as I got done with that live video, he's like, I need you to come see me. I need to talk to you about Pearl Park. And I'm like, I didn't know who Pearl Park belonged to at the time. I was just over there being a tourist or whatever. And so Bill agreed to come to the last Parks meeting and talk to them about Pearl Park. And that was exciting to me because he's a wealth of information. I'm not. I'm just like some geek tourist that walks 21 miles in the last 3 days. So if y'all want to know where the bad sidewalks are, Lisa knows where they are. So I was going to just let Carla, I was going to say thank you, because it takes a lot to be a council member. I would never want your job, but I appreciate her reaching out to me and doing that. And I never see Gina here, but let me just tell you, y'all, when you want something done around here and you walk in and go, what do I do about this random thing? She's the girl. Like, the next day, Charlie's like, how'd you get those people over here? I'm like, I just told Gina we needed this dead tree picked up, or we needed this done. Y'all, this doesn't happen in the city where I moved from. So just, you know, if I'm going to complain about $1.50 a week in water, no way, because I'm getting services like is amazing in this town. So Carla, if you will, just humor me and tell them a little bit of information about what we found out about Pearl Park, and then y'all can keep that on your radar, because I keep talking, and I'm going to keep talking. This is my new thing, because I've already been the flag lady. So now Bill said, well, if you'll be the Pearl Park princess, we might help you. And I was like, I don't care what you have to say. So Carla might talk to you a little bit about that, just so it's in your mind. And I'm talking a lot about multi-generational parks, because I'm learning about that. I'm studying about it. Pearl Park would totally qualify for that, because there's a lot of school groups. I've been watching them all week long. Teachers don't want to be in the classroom right now, so they're out taking field trips around town. And so if Carla, you'll just give a snippet, and that's what I want to say. Thanks, Tina, because you're the bomb.
Just real briefly, we found out that the Community Foundation has an account set up there for the people who started the Jefferson County Conservation Club or something. I can't remember the exact name.
Jefferson County Historic Preservation.
Thank you, Historic Preservation, thank you. And that there is a fund set up, like, to help take care of those buildings, to preserve them, to fix them up. But that group has grown so small because of the age and deaths that have happened and things like that. But that if we wanted to pursue that, as a Parks Department, we could possibly access some of that money to fix that up, to make it, to preserve it, and then, go from there as to how we wanted to use it as far as education or whatever. But just to know that there were funds that we didn't even really know existed, because through my involvement in the Parks Department, I found out that we have 26 different properties that the Parks Department and the city together are supposed to keep up. I met a guy from North Vernon yesterday. They have three parks, and we have 26. And he was just like, how do you do it? And I said, well, we don't do it well yet. We're still figuring that out. But anyway, it's just nice that sometimes if you take it a step further and you pursue, you find out that maybe there is funding, and there are possibilities that we didn't even know existed a month ago.
Well, on that topic too, happy to report that because Bill came to the Parks Department meeting and talked about that funding, John Nyberg at the Historical Society has reached out to him to help facilitate the painting of the buildings down there. It's good. So that was a great outcome. City maintains the area, and that fund is supposed to maintain the buildings. It's good. Good outcome. Thank you, Lisa. We're still under public comment period. Anybody else here would like to address council or the mayor's office? Please come to the podium. Okay. Ethan, how are you, man? Got a constitution for you up here. Thanks for coming, Mr. Barter. You're Mr. Barter's class or Mr. Cole's class?
Mr.
Barker's. Thank you so much. You're a senior, right?
Yeah. Thank you.
If you haven't seen Ethan perform, you need to come to one of Madison High School's productions. It's fantastic. I know, but he'll be back. He'll be back. Moving on to the mayor's comments, I just have a few things. I do want to mention, as we're talking about high school events, Thursday, Madison will host the track and field sectionals. That's the first time in, probably a couple decades since Madison has hosted a sectional. It's usually been in Jeffersonville. So if you get a chance and you want to watch some great track and field, come to the high school track Thursday, 5:30, and support all of our athletes who are participating in sectionals. Secondly, I want to mention too that this is National Police Week. This was established by a joint resolution of Congress in 1962 and pays special recognition to those law enforcement officers who have lost their lives in line of duty for the safety and protection of others. We are so grateful for all of our law enforcement in doing the work, and Chief Wallace is here, America's Chief John Wallace is here. But we, the city of Madison is blessed, but we have had one fatality in the line of duty, Officer Knoble, and he is recognized every year for the sacrifice that he made for our community, and there's a plaque honoring him at Madison Police Department. But we are blessed that we have not had more fatalities than Mr. Knoble given his life for our community. Lastly, I'll mention that this is the last meeting in May, so Memorial Day weekend is coming up. If you've been out and about the community on any weekend as the weather's warmed up, you'll see that it's extremely vibrant, and there are lots of plans for Memorial Day weekend that involve tourism and shopping and great food and music and what is becoming one of the region's biggest car shows. Chief Washer is here. He is one of the organizers. Commissioner Little was here a little while ago. He is also one of the organizers of our local car club. And come down to the Brown Gym about 5 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, Memorial Day weekend, and you can help us meet and greet the drivers of these fantastic, cool cars as they come in for the car show. It's a lot of fun. Hopefully it will not be 40 degrees this year like it was last year. So we are hoping for warm weather, but there's lots to do. I mean, fantastic. There's a new publication called The Outlook that is published out of Scott County that is becoming, a replacement for the Roundabout. Talks a lot about things that are going on, and Madison is prominently featured in The Outlook because there's so much going on regionally here in our community with just fantastic events. So that's all I want to say, and our next council meeting is Tuesday, June the 7th. I hope everybody has a very happy and safe Memorial Day weekend, and happy to answer any questions council might have or entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move for adjournment.
I second.
Thank you, council. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Thank you to all of our guests today, and especially our special guests.